Well, hello, Northland family. We are so glad that you're joining us from all the locations where we're spread out. Obviously, we are not here. Now, we weren't all planning to be here on campus this weekend, but we were planning a partial opening, and we so appreciate your patience as many of you got the email or the notifications. We made a difficult decision, but it was a decision for the safety of our staff as well as you as our congregation. A significant portion of our staff that was going to be serving this weekend in the reopening and having contact with all of you were exposed to a confirmed case of COVID-19, and out of an abundance of caution. And really aligning with, it's not out of fear, not out of abundance of fear, but just caution. Philippians 2:3 talks about us considering one another's interests before we consider our own. And that's what a lot of this pandemic is about, is us caring for one another. And so we will keep you posted. We've just suspended because we obviously needed some 14-day type quarantines and isolation. So we'll keep you posted. But the beautiful thing is we're going to keep worshiping just like we have been for these last couple of months. And today we are back in our sanctuary here in Longwood, but we're also in your home, in your office, in your car, at the beach, wherever you are. And I've got a very special group of people that I want to acknowledge. It's all our dads. Happy Father's Day. I actually was thinking about, you know what, I don't know if I need to wear a sport coat or not today, but my dad would have wanted me to wear a sport coat, so I did. This past week, Arlene and I were in a restaurant, and I don't know if you've noticed, but restaurants are a little bit quieter these days than they have been in the past, and we actually were able to hear some of the songs that were playing, and a song came up I haven't heard for a long time, and Arlene and I joked about it because this singer, his name's Dan Fogelberg, he grew up in her neck of the woods where she grew up, and Dan Fogelberg is a popular singer back in the 70s and the 80s, and he had a song called The Leader of the Band, and that song was playing, and so I brought up the lyrics because I knew some of the background of it. It's about his dad. He wrote it in 1981. I'm just going to give you a couple of the choruses. The leader of the band is tired, and his eyes are growing old, but his blood runs through my instrument, and his song is in my soul. My life has been a poor attempt to imitate the man, but I'm just a living legacy to the leader of the band. His dad was the leader of the band there in Peoria, Illinois, for many, many years. And then he says this: I thank you for the music and your stories of the road. I thank you for the freedom when it came my time to go. I thank you for the kindness in the times when you got tough. And Papa, I don't think I said I love you near enough. In 1981, as Dan was visiting home and having to deal with the release of his album and actually was playing a tape of that song, he did know his dad was in the house, and his dad heard it. And because he had wanted to surprise him. But his dad says, I'm really glad because that gave me more time to enjoy it. He was honored. His dad died the next year. And Dan Fogelberg at his concerts would always have people coming up to him saying, thank you for that song. And it reminded me that I need to make sure and tell my dad that I love him. And I realized that we're all over the map in terms of our relationships with our fathers, and some of us, our dads, are no longer with us. They've headed home. But at the same time, we can still honor them and appreciate them today. And those of you who are dads, I want to pray for you right now. And let's thank God for our dads, but also let's pray for our dads. And for all you fathers to model the fatherhood of God. Yes, we're imperfect. Yes, we need grace. Yes, some of us are carrying wounds from long ago, from relationships that were less than healthy. But the bottom line, in just a moment, we're going to sing a song about how enough God is. So let's pray and acknowledge that as our Father, He really is perfect. And let's open up this time in worship. Father, it's a beautiful thing to be able to say, Father, Abba to you as Jesus taught us. I wanted to thank you for every person within the sound of my voice. We all have earthly fathers. but we're all over the map in terms of our relationship with those earthly fathers. And so we want to come to you as our Heavenly Father to heal where we need healing, to forgive us where we need forgiveness, to give us strength as dads where we need strength, to give us new beginnings where we need new beginnings, and to enable us to maybe reflect a little bit more today about you as our Father, and then carry what we take from that into our earthly relationships as mothers, as fathers, as sons and daughters, as brothers and sisters. And during this pandemic, relationships have risen to the top of the pile in terms of importance. We realize more than ever we have limited time with one another. So may we seize this day with each other and with you. And I want to thank you that there is nothing, no matter what we're going through, there is nothing that you can't do. So enable us right now as we sing to acknowledge the good news of the gospel.
Just one word, you calm the storm that surrounds me. Just one word, the darkness has to retreat. Oh, just one touch, I feel the presence of heaven. Just one touch, my eyes are open to see. My heart can't help but believe. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a mountain that He can't move. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do. Just one word, you heal what's broken inside me. Oh, just one word, and you revive every dream. Just one touch, I feel the power of heaven. And just one touch, my eyes are open to see. My heart can't help but believe. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a mountain that He can't move. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do. Oh, there's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a prison wall He can't break through. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do. Oh. Now we'll believe for greater things. There's no power like the power of Jesus. Let faith arise, let all agree. There's no power like the power of Jesus. Sing, I will believe for greater things. There's no power like the power of Jesus. Let faith arise, let all agree. There's no power like the power of Jesus. I will believe for greater things. There's no power like the power of Jesus. Let faith arise, let all agree. There is no power like the power. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a mountain that He can't move. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that Jesus can't do. There's nothing that our God can't do.
This Jesus, how precious, mender of a million shattered parts. This Jesus, relentless. Oh, oh, oh. This Jesus, this Jesus, so wonderful, so beautiful, so kind and loving, isn't he, isn't he? Beyond compare, treasure rich and rare, marvelous and holy, isn't he, isn't he? Giver of the grace that none could earn, this Jesus, extravagant, keeper of his promise and his word, such goodness, such faithfulness, so wonderful, so beautiful, so kind and loving, isn't he, isn't he? Beyond compare, treasure rich and rare, marvelous and holy, isn't he, isn't he? You alone be honored and adored, and you alone be glorified and praised, and you alone be honored and adored, and you alone be glorified and praised, and you alone will reign forevermore, and you alone are the name above all names, and you alone will reign forevermore, and you alone are the name above all names. Oh, oh, this Jesus, this Jesus. Oh, 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 this Jesus, my Jesus, so wonderful, so beautiful, so kind and loving, isn't he, isn't he? Beyond compare, treasure rich and rare, marvelous and holy, isn't he, isn't he?
All the earth bows down to you. They sing praise to you. They sing the praises of your name.
The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. Day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge.
You will go out in joy and be led forth in peace. The mountains and hills will burst into song before you, and all the trees of the field will clap their hands. Were creation suddenly articulate with 1,000 tongues to lift one cry? Then from north to south and east to west, we'd hear Christ be magnified. Were the whole earth echoing his eminence, his name would burst from sea to sky, and from the rivers to the mountain tops, we'd hear Christ be magnified. Oh, oh, Christ be magnified. Let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified. The altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. For every creature finds its inmost melody, and every human heart its native cry. Oh, then in one enraptured hymn of praise, we'll sing Christ be magnified. Oh, be magnified. Sing out, oh, Christ be magnified. Let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified. The altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. Be magnified in me. Let my life show you. I won't bow down to idol. I'll stand strong and worship you. And if it puts me in the fire, I'll rejoice 'cause you're there too. And I won't be formed by feelings. I'll hold fast to what is true. And if the cross brings transformation, then I'll be crucified with you. 'Cause death is just the doorway into resurrection life. And if I join you in your suffering, then I'll join you when you rise. And you return to glory with all the angels and the saints. My heart will still be singing, and my soul will be the same. Oh, Christ be magnified.
Let's pray together. Jesus, where we are in our journey, wherever it is, it's known to you. Where we have been, where we are, where we will be. Because in the beginning was you and the Word. You were God, you are God, you will be God. And so in the midst of the zigs and zags of this thing we call a human journey, and recently we've all experienced plenty of zigs and zags. Things that have broken our heart, things that have alarmed us, things that have burdened us, things that have motivated us, things that have reminded us of how small we are, how far we have to grow, and also things that have reminded us how big you are, how enough you are. And so we all gather through this thing called technology. And even though we haven't been able to gather in person, even some of us, we're gathered right now by your Spirit and ask that you would speak into us. Word of God, Logos, speak. Word who became flesh, speak. Speak light, speak life into my journey and to my friends' journeys. And I pray that you would enable us to see you a little bit better. As some Greeks said long ago, coming to the disciples, we'd like to see Jesus. I pray that would be our heart's yearning right now. So Holy Spirit, would you come? Would you speak to us through the written word, through the living word, in the name of the word. Amen. Amen. Well, I've got in my pocket a ton of potential. It's a seed. Seeds sometimes are kind of colorful and they're things that you like to look at, but it's just potential, that's all. Until you do something risky. That seed might be pretty content being looked at and doing its thing on the outside, but a very frightening thing is that seed needs to go down into the soil. And something can begin to happen where that potential can take root. Friday this week, I was on a Zoom call with a good friend of mine named Mako Fujimura, and we were talking a little bit about his book that came out several years ago called Culture Care. And in the book, he talks about a pear tree on his farm, which he and I have stood next to and looked at and talked about. I've been up at his farm with him in New Jersey. And he writes about it in his book. And he talks about how that seed that originated that pear tree once was very small, and then it went into that soil and became a little sprout, and then grew into something full grown that was downright beautiful and also generative. And the beauty and the generative ability of that pear tree in terms of scale, the beauty and the generative ability is way beyond the scale of the size. It's way out of proportion. A lot more happens once that seed goes into the ground. For that pear tree, it becomes wood for fires and warmth for people, the limbs that shed and fall over the years. Maybe it provides wood for walls or wood for art. Maybe that what was once a little seed has germinated into something magnificent that creates beauty or solidity to a landscape or prevents erosion. Maybe that tree ends up inspiring poetry. Maybe it ends up inspiring a play or a photograph or a painting. Maybe that tree that once was very, very small, once it went into the ground, and maintained its essence, but it was also transformed into something far greater than it had ever been. Maybe it can teach scientists or provide a shade for children to play or inspire a man or a woman to reflect on who they are as human beings in the midst of creation. And it all starts not just with a seed, but with a seed dying. That's the phrase that Jesus used. We're going through John's gospel. So if you've got a Bible, turn to the Gospel of John. And if you don't have one, you can follow along with us. I'm going to start reading in chapter 12, verse 20. But let me tell you a little bit about where we are in the narrative. We've just taken a shift these last couple of weeks in the passages where we're now in what is called Holy Week in liturgical church history, Passion Week. It's the last 7 days of Jesus' life before the resurrection. So we're in the midst of that week, and what's happening is the mood is changing in John's gospel. The cost that Jesus is paying is becoming more and more evident. The cost he'll pay on the cross. And he's also inviting us and summoning us as human beings to take a similar path of passion. We've got a price to pay, a cost. Following Jesus costs us. It comes out in this text. John chapter 12, verse 20. Now, there were some Greeks among those who went to worship at the festival. This is the Passover festival. And I want to stop there just for a moment. I won't spend all the time, this much time on every one of the verses, but there were some Greeks among those. This is saying a lot. There's been so much already happening in John's gospel where Jesus is talking with the Jews and the Jewish leaders, and they are pushing back. And Jesus is making it clear, I came to fulfill what is known as Judaism in the law, but I didn't come to be limited to that. I've come for every nation, every tribe, every tongue, every people. And the word that's used there, they came up to the festival and they came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, with a request. Sir, they said, we would like to see Jesus. I love that. In Greek, what they are saying is essentially, we want to interview him. He's already cleansed the temple and been in the court of the Gentiles, part of the temple. There was a place for the Gentiles to come, and it had been crowded out by all the religious hucksters, and there was no room for the Gentiles to come. And Jesus was defending them. He was always open to them, and they're saying, there's something here. We want to talk to him. And we don't know if Jesus came right away. If they ended up talking, we assume they did. But Philip went to tell Andrew. Andrew and Philip in turn told Jesus. And Jesus replied, the hour has come. What these Gentiles are asking is an indication to all of us, all of you, that the hour has come. It's time. He lived 30 years in obscurity. The last 3 years, he's been in this ministry of great teaching and miracles and displays of power and love and compassion. Now he says, the hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Very truly, I tell you. Remember, very truly, it's an Aramaic expression, amen, amen, truly, truly. He says, I want you to pay attention to this. So we'll come back to this in a minute, but I'll still read it in the context of the larger passage. Very truly, I tell you, unless a kernel of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. Anyone who loves their life will lose it, while anyone who hates their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, my servant also will be. My Father will honor the one who serves me. Now, and he becomes very transparent. His humanity, fully God, fully human, his humanity is coming out. The price he's about to pay, he's aware of it. He says, now my soul is troubled. And what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? No, because it was for this very reason I came to this hour. He did not die as an afterthought. No human being has ever been birthed in this planet with the distinct purpose of coming to die, with the exception of Jesus. And he's the only one that didn't have to die. He came, he says, no, nobody takes my life from me, I'm going to give it up. Father, glorify your name. At the epicenter of redemptive history is the cross. And Jesus knows that's where he's headed. He's been headed there his whole life. And then a voice came from heaven. I've glorified it, and I will glorify it again. And the crowd that was there, don't pay attention. John is bringing this up. He's writing this within the lifetime of a lot of the people that were there. And so he's giving witness to yet another miracle. He says the crowd that was there and heard it said it had thunder. Others said an angel had spoken to him. So they heard the voice of God. And Jesus said, this voice was for your benefit, not mine. Now's the time for judgment on this world. Now the prince of this world will be driven out. And when I am lifted up from the earth, and that's a direct reference to the cross. He refers to that numerous times, which is what they would say. Because in crucifixion, you would lay the prisoner down, the one who was condemned, and they would probably usually be on a crossbar, and the center bar would already be in the ground. They would lay them down. They would nail their hands onto the crossbar, and then they would lift them up and put them on the cross. And he said this to show the kind of death he was going to die. And the crowd spoke up. We've heard from the law that the Messiah will remain forever. So how can you say the Son of Man must be lifted up? Who is this Son of Man? And then Jesus told them, you're going to have the light just a little while longer. Walk while you have the light before darkness overtakes you. You need to seize this moment, he says. And you know what? He's saying that to you and me right now as well. See, we've got to seize this moment. What he's saying to us, how he's impressing us and shaping us. Whoever walks in the dark doesn't know where they're going, but believe in the light while you have the light so that you may become children of light. And when he had finished speaking, Jesus left and hid himself from them. Our vision here at Northland is engaging people to be fully alive in Jesus. Engaging people to be fully alive in Jesus. That vision is rooted in John chapter 10, verse 10. When Jesus says, the thief comes only to steal and to kill and destroy, and I've come that they may have life and have it to the full. So this whole notion of engaging people to be fully alive, there's heart-beating life and lung-breathing life, but then there's the life of God. And Jesus says, I didn't come to make you religious. I came to restore you to where you were oriented as human beings. What's your purpose for? And that's to be fully alive to me. It's referring to the life of God. But I want to contrast this statement. A lot of people take this out of context and turn following Jesus into something that's happy, clappy, and we don't have any problems. And this whole life to the full becomes kind of the coasting thing. It's not the kind of life we're talking about. It's not something where Jesus is coming just to improve us. Something goes deeper than that. Now look at the verse that we just read in John chapter 12, verse 25. Anyone who loves their life will lose it, while anyone who hates their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Now go back to John 10:10. Back up there. The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I've come that they may have life and have it to the full. And that sounds exciting, which it is. Now go to John 12:25 again. But anyone who loves their life will lose it, while anyone who hates their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. What's up? How do you rectify this too? Well, the English words that we see as life here, there's actually two Greek words. The first two are referring to psyche. Anyone who loves their psyche, you could say ego, psyche. This is referring to the ego. Anyone who loves their ego, who's idolatrous about themselves. All of us are oriented to care about ourselves first and to say it's all about me. And that's what ego does. It seeks to say, I'm all about me. And Jesus says, you got to lay that psyche down. You got to die to that. to experience the Zoe, which is that its companion with eternal in this passage. But every time you see Zoe in John, it's referring to that life of God. It's not equated with heaven. Eternal life is a qualitative, not just quantitative, experience of being with God, in intimacy with God, that begins the moment we come to Christ, and then in heaven, it's no longer diluted. And what needs to happen for me to experience that full life of the gospel? To be fully alive? Is I've got my life, and this life has been created with great potential to exhibit the life of God, but I'm fallen. I'm consumed with me, and I look at that soul, and I don't want to be immersed in that. I don't want to die. And Jesus says the way for this to become this is you need to trust me and lay down your ego. Matthew chapter 7, verse 13. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction. Many enter through it, but small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life. That's Zoe. Remember, we've talked about it before. In John's Gospels and epistles, the word life, that we translate life, appears about 71 times. Only about 15 of those are referring to heart-beating, lung-breathing. Suke or bios are the two words usually that appear. The rest are Zoe. He says, Zoe, and you see it in Matthew as well. You see it in Luke. You see it in Mark. He says, "Wide is the gate, wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction. Many enter through it, but small is the gate, and narrow the road that leads to life. And only if you find it." Everybody's heart's beating and lungs breathing. But Jesus has said, narrow is the pathway because of the immensity of sin. I am the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life. You've got to come, you've got to enter back into that Zoe, that life of God, that fulfilled humanity that you were intended for. But there's a narrow pathway. It's not difficult from your standpoint in terms of, okay, it's narrow and it's a happenstance. It's a roll of the dice. Not in that sense, but he says, narrow is the way because I'm the only way. For this seed to fulfill its potential, it's not a matter of throwing it on some carpet. It's not a matter of gussying it up and surrounding it with a lot of other decorations. I can put this seed in a brand new car, a brand new house, or put it on vacation. It's still going to be a seed. I can get all the adornments and titles and degrees, and I can put money all around it. It's still going to be a seed. So how does this seed become what it was meant to be? Bury it? I don't want to bury it. I'm important to me. Wait a minute. And therein lies the cost of the gospel. Jesus says, you got to trust me. Go back to John 12. Look at those 3 verses. Very truly, I tell you, verse 24, unless a kernel of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. And anyone who loves their life will lose it, and while anyone who hates their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Whoever serves me must follow me. And where I am, my servant also will be. My Father will honor the one who serves me. In this passage, it's powerful. Our journeys and Jesus' journeys begin to overlap. Because what begins to become very clear is Jesus is going to give his life in order to bring life to the world, Zoe to the world. But for us to experiencing it, it's going to cost us our lives. Take a look. Jesus' life, giving his life for the life of the world, us giving our lives to experience that life, that's the parallel path we follow. He's headed to the cross. And neither of these are popular. This was not popular. You can see in that text, people are pushing back. Wait a minute, you're the Messiah. You don't need to die. Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians 1 that the cross is foolishness to people. The death of Jesus. And we don't want to give our lives. Everybody says, hey, the way for me to find my life is to find my life. Jesus says, no, the way to find your life is to lose your life. You guys know the whole good news, bad news jokes. You know, we've all got them. And I'm not going to risk giving you one. I'll save that for giving my sons tomorrow on a Zoom call. I'll give them a couple of good dad jokes that they'll laugh out of politeness. But you know the good news. The good news, bad news. There's some bad news, good news. Which you want to hear first? There's some good news and bad news in this text, but I'm going to rephrase it. It's hard news and it's hopeful news, and they go together. Go back through these three verses. I want you to look at how there's hard news in each of these. Verse 24, the hard news is that a seed has to die. The hopeful news, but if it does, it produces much fruit. The hard news is if we love our life, we're going to lose it. If I'm all about just kind of adorning this and not coming to the feet of Jesus, I'm going to lose it. But if I submit my life and say, Jesus, I give this to you. I want to put it in the soil of your grace and your love and your calling. If we submit, we'll gain life. You look at verse 26, twice. First part of verse 26, we must follow him. Here's the hard news. We must follow him to the cross. We've got to follow him. We've got to embrace a Savior that died a sacrificial death. And that's foolishness to the world. But if we follow him there, we'll be with him there, he says, in the second part of that first half of verse 26. The second half of verse 26, we must serve him, but if so, he'll honor us. Hard news, hopeful news. Hard news, hopeful news. So how do I experience his life? I embrace the hard, and I also embrace the hopeful. Now, there are a lot of people that would say, okay, great, this whole life of the gospel, let's embrace the hopeful. You can't not embrace the hard. It's back and forth. If I want to experience the potential and to have a hopeful calling to my life, there will be a hard step of submission. But this is what seeds are meant for. I'm guessing nobody within the sound of my voice right now has ever given somebody important to them in their lives on an anniversary or a birthday or something. You couples out there, hey, honey, I brought you a seed for our anniversary, for your birthday. We don't do that. That's not what this was intended to be. This was intended to become this. You and I are meant for so much more. But we've got to embrace the hard in order to also embrace the hopeful. A couple of weeks ago, I mentioned to you guys about being down in the jungles of Ecuador and Jim Elliot. And the quote that I shared with you then, I have sometime before, the graduate of Wheaton College, and went down to visit the Waldani, and some of the men, one of them who actually was part of the war party that killed Jim and his 4 friends. But one of Jim's famous quotes that I gave you a couple of weeks ago, he is no fool who gives what he cannot keep. That's embracing the hard to gain what he cannot lose. That's embracing the hopeful. And there's this rhythm that a seed moves into to embrace both the hard and also embrace the hopeful. This is the fullness of life, but it will cost me. The fullness of Zoe life, but it will cost me my suke, my ego, my psyche life. Luke 9:23, then he said to them all, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily. So this is not just one time, on a daily basis, because my ego is always coming out, me wanting to be first. And the way for me to be fulfilled as a human being is to find myself once again at home in Jesus. Follow me, for whoever wants to save their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for me will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world and yet lose or forfeit their very self? I can gain all the adornments and the bank accounts and the newspaper articles and celebrity status and the vacation homes, the titles, the trinkets, the treasures. And the price I pay is I will say that's more important than the life of God. Jesus says to experience my life, you've got to embrace the hard and embrace the hopeful. You just embrace the hard without the hopeful, that's asceticism. We're trying to earn something. We embrace the hopeful without the hard, that's easy believism. Neither are biblical, neither the gospel. It's one and two coming together. Colossians chapter 1, verse 27 says, to them God has chosen to make known among the Gentiles the glorious riches of this mystery, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory. So, Lewis talks about in his book Mere Christianity, talks about cottages and palaces. And he says, what we do is we come to God and we invite him into our lives. And Jesus, I want you to come into my life. And we think at first, he's going to, and he actually says he's borrowing from a parable of George MacDonald. So he comes in and he starts fixing a broken drain pipe here or a loose hinge there, and we say, yeah, those things needed to happen. And then all of a sudden, he starts tearing down walls and adding wings and creating stories and causing things that are kind of painful to go through. And to say, whoa, Jesus, what are you up to? And Lewis says what MacDonald was talking about is so often we give our lives to Jesus thinking that he just wants to improve our cottage when actually he's wanting to build a palace. We're thinking cottage, he's thinking palace. We think accessorize. He didn't come to me as a seed and say, hey, let me just give you a little religious cloak to continue to be a seed. He didn't come to accessorize me, he came to transform me. He didn't come just to decorate me. There's not a scarcity, there's an abundance of what he wants to do. He wants to fully fulfill himself through us. What does Jesus look like? Looks like you and me walking on this planet filled with his Spirit. Christ in you, the hope of glory. My hope of having a life of significance is knowing that Jesus is in me, and that involves me embracing the hard news and also embracing the hopeful news so that people see Jesus. And the Jesus they see in me will be different from the Jesus they see in you because we're his image bearers. And the beauty is, who we all are together make the body of Christ. We together display his splendor. We together reveal who he is. Christ in you. I read a woman's blog a few years ago, and she went into the store to get a blueberry pomegranate juice. And she was looking on the label. She saw, that's great. But then she looked, and filtered water was the first ingredient. And you know, in labels, the way that the regulations go, the dominant ingredient has to be listed first. And so she started going down the list, and she saw there was some pear juice concentrate. She didn't get to blueberry or pomegranate till 4 and 7. Really, it wasn't. And even though the label, she said all natural juice, it was misleading because it might be all natural juice, but it was just blueberry and pomegranate flavoring. It wasn't the real juice. And what if you and I had a label, an ingredients label on us? Where would Jesus be? The number one ingredient? Or 5 or 6 down? Christ in you, the hope of glory. How does that happen? Here's a commercial for next week, what we're going to unpack. Galatians chapter 2, verse 20. I've been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life that I now live in the body, I live by faith. So what's happening? It's Christ in me, the hope of glory, my hope of significance. I'm living by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. Notice that phrase, by faith. Verse 31 of John chapter 20, we've looked at it numerous times, but these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing, you may have life in his name. By faith, by believing. How do I unpack this? For every yes in my life, there's a no. And so every time I say yes to Jesus, I'm saying no to some other things about my ego. And it's not that I'm being squelched, I'm being fulfilled and freed, but it comes with me embracing the hard. Remember that. Number one, embrace the hard. And number two, embrace the hopeful. Take a look at that. And I want you to stare at it for a minute. There's something wrong with that. This is actually number two, and this is number three. What number one is embracing him. The embracing the hard and embracing the hopeful is a response. He takes the first step in this dance, not me. And it's a response to his grace and his truth and his way. And so I fixate on who he is in worship and submission. That enables me to embrace the hard, which then paves the way for me to embrace the hopeful. C.S. Lewis tells about in his book, the classic, The Great Divorce, about a ghost. There's a beautiful allegory, but bottom line, there's a ghost that is a fallen man, a fallen creature, and a lizard's on his shoulder, basically in the ego. And the angel of God comes along and says, you wanted me to take care of that? And he says, no, that'll hurt too much. He said, it might, but you know it's causing you more problems than good. Finally, he lets him kill it. And what happens is the ghost is transformed into a triumphant, beautiful man. And that lizard is transformed into a stallion. And the ghost that has become a man gets on that lizard that now has become a stallion and rides off to the mountains of God. It's a matter of me with that lizard of an ego, embracing who Jesus is. And saying, Jesus, this does not feel natural. A seed thinks, to be natural, I need to be out here. And no, I'm going to trust you that I need to die. This is where I belong in submission to you. And I do that because I trust who you are. I trust your grace and your truth and your love and your purpose for me. And what begins to happen is the beauty of Jesus begins to come out in my life. And that's what the body of Christ looks like. Tons of seeds, all submitting themselves to the lordship of Jesus and saying we're going to embrace him, and out of that we will embrace the hard and we will die daily and also embrace the hopeful so that the world may know that Jesus is King. We're going to embrace him together before we leave. I want to encourage you right now, settle yourself in a posture of submission. Who do we go to? Who are we embracing? Kevin DeYoung, the theologian, talks about we invent these Jesuses in our religiosity. You know, Starbucks Jesuses we go to and think, okay, he's going to be kind of about our social agenda or maybe a political agenda. There's the touchdown Jesuses that we create in our mind that are all about how to win the Super Bowl. There's therapist Jesus that we come to. Hey, just come help me cope. There's the guru Jesus, that's the spirituality kick. He says some people create in their minds, or the good example Jesus, if I'll just follow him. Or the gentle Jesus has got, manicured nails and a permanent hair and is always just saying non-offensive things. Or the platitude Jesus is all about just saying stuff that we can put on our refrigerators. Now, the Jesus that we embrace to be willing to die so that we might live is a Jesus that I'm going to let my friend Jamila tell you about right now. And then we're going to have a lot of other folks from our midst, some other seeds that have gone into the ground. And we're all going to exalt who he is. Let's worship right now.
And then there's Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God. Not just another prophet, not just another rabbi, not just another wonder worker. He was the one they had been waiting for. The son of David and Abraham's chosen seed. The one to deliver us from captivity. The goal of the Mosaic law. Yahweh in the flesh. The one to establish God's reign and rule. The one to heal the sick, give sight to the blind, freedom to the prisoners, and proclaim good news to the poor. The Lamb of God came to take away the sins of the world. This Jesus was the Creator, come to earth and the beginning of a new creation. He embodied the covenant, fulfilled the commandments, and reversed the curse. This Jesus is the Christ that God spoke of to the serpent, the Christ prefigured to Noah in the flood, the Christ promised to Abraham, the Christ guaranteed to Moses before he died, the Christ promised to David when he was king, the Christ revealed to Isaiah as a suffering servant, the Christ predicted through the prophets and prepared for through John the Baptist. This Christ is not a reflection of the current mood or projection of our own desires. He is our Lord and God. He is the Father's Son, Savior of the world, and substitute for our sins, more loving, more holy, and more wonderfully terrifying than we ever thought possible. He is hope for our despair, life for our death, light for our darkness.
In the darkness we were waiting, without hope, without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes to fulfill the law and prophets. To a virgin came the word, from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three
I absolutely love that. I mean, the gift of our artists and our technology folks that would put that together, but at the core of that are seeds that have submitted their lives to the soil of His grace and His truth. And man, you saw them. I'm glad you've been with us. Keep chewing on this. Keep evaluating what are the no's that need to arrive in my life in order for me to say yes to Jesus and to fulfill who He's called me to be. Right after this, Rob and Hannah Jo are going to come back on as our host, and they will let you know a little bit more about our partnership with Seminole County Health Department regarding the COVID-19 issues that we've come across this week, and they will lay that out, and we're really wanting to cooperate with them and walk with them. Now, for all of us, let's continue to defer to one another and put one another's interest above our own, and ultimately put our interest into the soil of submission to Jesus. And I pray that this week you'll go as men and women who are laying down their lives, and as a result, finding your life. Go in the hope of the gospel. Amen. We'll see you next week.